Alright team, welcome back. I'm here with Rebecca Wilson from Rebecca Wilson Nutrition, talking all things nutrition related. Now we've just got the final question here, and it's quite big. And what I'll do is I'll write down actually what this person consumed, because the question is, this was my nutrition plan for the 2016 Coast to Coast and it didn't go so well. What did I do wrong? So I'll outline what they did below. And then what we're going to do is have a general talk through it, sort of think about what Bex's approach to race planning nutrition is, have a look at a couple of things that sort of jump out at us, but because there's a lot of information here, but there's not a lot of information as well, so we'll do what we can, but I think Jason might have to get in touch with you directly if he wants some more advice. So we've got a race plan for the Coast to Coast, and for those that don't know the Coast to Coast, it's a multi-sport race that goes from the west coast to the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. Running, biking, mountain running, then we do another bike and then a big kayak and then a final big ride to the finish. Winners are around about 10 hours. People can take up to a long time to do it. You can do it over 2 days or 1 day. I believe Jason did it over 1 day and he looks like he was ticking over about 16 3/4 hours, so he's out there for a big day. So, what's your general advice for people taking on such a long race in terms of how do they plan their nutrition?
The first thing, and where Jason asked you around how many calories is this and is it too much and how much should I be having, is the first thing I would say is rather than focusing on calories, it's look at carbohydrate. So carbohydrate is going to be the limiting nutrient there over this kind of a race, and we kind of look at a certain amount per hour and over this kind of duration we will be looking at kind of up to 90 grams per hour, which is quite a lot, particularly if you haven't trained. So historically it's been about 30 to 60, but they've found that we can get up to 90 grams if done in the right.
And so that's usually different types of carbohydrates. So using your glucose and your fructose to maximise that absorption rate. I think I've done a video about that. I'll post a link to it so people can look at it if they're interested. Cool, so we're looking at amount of carbohydrate versus calories, because calories could obviously come from protein and fat as well, but we're interested in the carbohydrate.
And you'll get protein and fats if you're having whole foods and things like that, or your more solid foods. Yep.
So it seems like Jason experienced a lot of stomach cramps and pain towards the end of the race, sort of ran out of energy partway through as well by the look of it. What are some of the things that jump out at you from this nutrition plan?
One thing that jumps out, and we've both talked about it, is the amount that he was trying to get in transition. So again, we don't know how big the can of canned rice is, but if it is one of those larger cans, it is quite a lot to kind of get through in a transition. So it's more making sure that you spread it out over the day so that you're eating well before the race and ideally kind of 3 to 4 hours before. And I know if you're starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 2 o'clock to have your breakfast isn't ideal. So sometimes you will have to have a bit of a lighter breakfast and make up for that over the day.
Because the cream rice incidents, it looks like even if it was a small can, that's still quite a lot of cream rice. But he had one before the race for breakfast, and then transition number 1 before the mountain run, then transition number 2. And then transition number 3 as well. Those are only 15 k's apart.
Yeah.
And then that was it. But that's a lot of cream rice, or a lot of anything just to dump in the stomach, especially when you're exercising so hard.
And that's one thing to think as well, is that you don't want anything, particularly at higher intensities, that's too heavy, that's too high in protein or too high in fibre, because those both slow down digestion, and they can, when you're exercising high intensity, blood flow to your stomach's actually reduced, so it makes it harder for you to digest. So you want to make things as easy as possible for your stomach. And as well, was he hydrated? So that's something that if Jason was here, I would ask what his fluid intake was. We've got a bit of an idea, but if you're dehydrated, then that can affect your ability to absorb nutrients out of your stomach as well.
Yeah, it seems like on the run, it's a sort of it's a case that people often fall into, is they take they measure their hydration on the run by how many handfuls of water they drink out of the river.
Yeah.
Which handfuls of water out of the river, you can get bugger all sometimes, depending on, Yeah. So potentially a better way is to carry a wee cup or a wee bottle with you, so you can scoop it up and then continue sipping it as you go. But yeah, trying to avoid just scooping water out of the river.
Yeah, and that is a really good practical strategy, is actually have a measure that you can. So you're not going to be carrying drink bottles and things like that, but if you've got that, that cup that you can.
Because there's plenty of water in the river. It's good drinking water, so there's no point carrying an extra 3 litres on your bag. But having a wee cup or a wee bottle that you can actually see how much you're getting in there is crucial.
Yep.
The other thing that kind of jumped out at me was the cramp that he had. And it seems like he was trying to counteract the cramp that he was getting with electrolyte capsules.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research gone into cramp, and there's always been kind of two schools of thought. Up until recently, we've kind of shifted towards one, and that's been nutrition versus neuromuscular. So in nutrition being dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. What the research is, and what we're more leaning towards now, is that more of that muscle fatigue and that neuromuscular cause. So, and you'll probably have more of a explanation of that, but I guess and what I've found is people train and race at quite different intensities, and there's a lot of things, obviously, elements on race day that you can't factor in training, so your nerves and all that kind of thing, and the intensity that you're racing. It's really hard to motivate yourself to train at that race intensity, and so if your muscles aren't used to exercising at that intensity, then definitely can affect and cause cramp. Nutrition things like dehydration, lack of fuel, and electrolyte can exacerbate that cramp in people that are prone.
For sure. So
it is important to make sure you are hydrated and got electrolytes on board, and that you're well fueled.
Just for performance.
Just for performance anyway. But if you are a cramper, they may make it worse.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something really important to remember as well, that in this example, Jason might have been setting himself up for this long before race day. And I think a lot of people don't sort of realise that with their training, that it's all preparation for race day. Whether it just be little parts or big parts in general. So while we're not able to sort of give a very specific answer, I guess, to this question, it does bring up some good points, and potentially we can sort of work around it a little bit more. But the key takeaways would be focus on that carbohydrate when you're planning your race nutrition.
And fluid.
and fluid, and how you're going to get that, and think about sort of the big picture as well, and spreading that out over the day rather than dumping it in when you've got an opportunity to eat.
And bank your nutrition early as well, which Jason does seem like he's done, but as the day goes on, you don't know what's going to happen, so starting to eat early and regularly is really important. And training, just like you train your legs and your heart and everything, make sure you train your gut as well. So as I said, you can get up to 90 grams per hour, but I wouldn't go out, tomorrow and do a race at that amount of carbohydrate if you haven't trained, and getting that ratio right. Yeah.
Another thing as well, he states that he used Perpetuum, which is the heavy nutrition product that has protein and carbohydrate. What are your thoughts around those sort of products?
That they are, particularly over endurance events, there is that growing popularity for having protein carbohydrate mixed drinks. As I said, there's a bit of research out there that you do get that kind of muscle damage over the race, and that it can help subside that maybe a little bit. My biggest thing is, first and foremost, is getting that carbohydrate in, and if you can tolerate that. So sometimes protein in that kind of an amount that's in Perpetuum hopefully shouldn't cause any gut issues, but it can. So it's trialling it and training. If you can tolerate the taste and the consistency, as well as the makeup of it, then by all means it's a good product.
Yeah, in my experience, people tend to be able to tolerate it quite well on the bike.
Yeah, but not on the run.
As soon as they start running, and Jason said he'd taken 6 scoops of Perpetuum during the run. It's quite don't know how much water he put with that, but relatively concentrated. It
is a concentrated, and that's the thing as well, is looking at the mode or the what you're doing. So on the bike, we call it the rolling buffet. You can quite often take on a bit more. As soon as you get into the run, you've got that jiggling of your gut that's going to counteract, and also tends to be a bit of a higher intensity. So as the intensity lifts, as I said, that blood flow reduces, and then you add that jiggling in. It's just a bit of a wish-wash in there as far as, and things cannot end up too well. You might be running to find a bush.
No, that's fantastic. Well, Jason, if you've got any more questions about your race nutrition, feel free to post them below and we'll do our best to answer them. Otherwise, sounds like you might need to get in touch with Bex personally and get it sorted out, because it doesn't sound like it ended very well. If you've got any questions about your nutrition or races coming up, feel free to post them below and I'll do my best to get Bex to answer them when she can. If you want specific advice, make sure you get out and check Bex's website out. A lot of good information on there just in general, especially on your Facebook page.